The World's Greatest Corporate Spy. Now there's a good title. Let's learn more about social engineering. He's got a new book out. Robert Kerbeck joins me on this bonus episode of The Business of Tech. Robert, thanks for joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. What a pleasure.
The best way to give somebody context is to ask the question, tell me about your journey. Like how did you get here? What's the backstory?
Right. How did I become the world's greatest corporate spy?
Which is such a cool title.
Yeah. It wasn't that I didn't come up with that. The New York Post said that, which was very nice of them. Yeah, I'm from Philadelphia. My family is very well known in the automobile business. If you want a deal on a Maserati, tell them that I sent you. The Kerbeck name is very well known. My great-grandfather sold horse carriages before cars were invented. My grandfather took over that dealership. My father took over that dealership, and I was expected to take over that dealership. But when I graduated from college, I'd done some acting in college and kind of fallen in love with acting, went to work for my dad. And it just didn't feel right for me. The trickery of car sales, it just didn't sit well with me. And so I moved to New York to become an actor. And of course, that ends up being pretty ironic that I didn't want to do car sales because it felt dishonest. And I stumble into this career as a corporate spy because actors need survival jobs. And I didn't have the patience to be a waiter. I wasn't a late night guy. So bartending was out. And a buddy of mine had this job. He kind of was very mysterious about it. He said something about it. Then he immediately shut up, like he knew he wasn't supposed to talk about it. I said, hey, dude, I'm broke. Help me out. I need a job. And he was like, So finally, he gets me this interview. I go to the Upper East Side. Your listeners probably know the Upper East Side of Manhattan is the wealthiest area, old money. And I go up to this doorman building. I take the elevator up to the penthouse. This woman opens the door. I remember she had a cigarette in a martini glass, but maybe that's just a little writerly exaggeration. But in any event, I went into the apartment, and it was the nicest apartment I'd ever been in. And right away, I knew whatever she did, it was very lucrative. And it was the strangest interview I've ever had. She never asked me a thing about my skills, my background, didn't ask for my resume, sent me on my way. I thought I didn't get the job. My buddy calls up and says, you're hired. But don't get too excited because no one is able to do this job. And the next day I went out to Brooklyn, the exact opposite, rundown neighborhood, the crack epidemic. This is in the 90s. Crack epidemic is hitting, Brooklyn hard. And I walk up 4 flights of stairs, knock on this door. This woman opens it. This attractive Irish woman says, come on in. You'll work in my bedroom. And I had no idea what this job was. And so she takes me into her bedroom. There's a futon on the ground and a desk. And I'm like, oh, boy, here we go. And she says, sit down at the desk. And she begins to tell me that what we do is we use our acting skills to call major corporations and trick people using manipulation, using accents, using personas, using voices to get people to tell us secrets that they should never tell us. And that was the beginning of my apprenticeship as a corporate spy.
So what is a corporate spy? Like, what's are you handed an envelope and said, go find this out? Like, what's the job description look like for a corporate spy?
Yeah, well, it's sort of like that. I mean, basically, think of, you and I are both football fans. And think about if you could get the playbook on your opponent 2 days before the big game, and you knew every play they were going to run, every formation, everything. That's what corporations are looking for on their biggest rivals, and they hire spies to find that out. So we're calling up, and remember, another article described me as LinkedIn before LinkedIn was invented. So remember in the 90s and even in the aughts, LinkedIn wasn't really a thing. LinkedIn really didn't become a thing until after the crash in 2008, and then LinkedIn really exploded. But back in the day, and even today, you can tell who's at a firm, but you can't understand the exact organization, and you also definitely can't understand who the rock stars are at firms. Who are the individuals at firms that are killing it, or that are generating incredible amounts of revenue for that firm? And so we were hired to determine the organizational chart, determine who the rock stars were, determine the corporation's future plans, future products, future strategies. Were they expanding? Were they entering new markets? Anything and everything that a rival would want to know about a corporation, we would find out.
Now, were these only large companies hiring? What's the kind of, was it all corporate work or the government? Like, give me a little bit of the profile of the kinds of companies that are hiring spies.
Every corporation in the world, globally, large, small, and medium, are hiring spies every day. I'm here to tell you corporate spying is alive and well. If any of your listeners are looking to pivot into a new career, they can reach out to me through my website, and I'll be more than happy to send them leads, because corporations are desperate for spies. One of the most shocking things, so I write this book, RUSE, and one of the most shocking things about publishing the book was how many corporations reached out to me after reading my book asking me to spy for them. And I'm kind of like, don't you know I've outed myself as a spy? I basically put a target on my back. I wouldn't be very smart if I identified myself as a corporate spy and then went back, into the breach, so to speak.
Now, I got to ask, because it's the fun, any of us in technology, but are there cool gadgets and gizmos that go along with this? Voice modulators, changes like that? Or is this all just raw people? What are the tools of the trade?
Well, remember, I started out in the analog days, right? So we were basically, and we did go in person to some, we would go to some events, and we would go to, a bar, we would go to a cocktail party, a Christmas party. But we very quickly learned that we were able to get far more information over the telephone, because we were able to portray ourselves as either vendors that had some sort of affiliate relationship with a firm, so a smaller company that had a contract with a large company, and we would study what that contract was, because usually there was some information about on the internet about, so-and-so consulting firm was just awarded this contract with Microsoft or with Goldman Sachs, and so we would study. And so when we would call these firms, we knew everything about the contract. And so the people on the other end would go, oh, it's the consulting guys over at XYZ. They need access to this information. Or it's the accounting firms, Price Waterhouse. They need access to this information. So we would utilize all of that stuff to get people to believe we were who we said we were, and then they would basically, open up the vault, so to speak, and give us whatever information we wanted. Now, over time, we would develop all different types of techniques so that we couldn't be traced, right? So one of the big ones that is utilized a lot, even still today, is call spoofing, right? So if you're going to use a phone call, and I'm here to tell you the phone call is alive and well, even though much hacking obviously is now in the realm of technology, there's still a great deal of the major cyber crime organizations that utilize social engineering first to determine the information that they want to learn, so that the hacking is much more successful, right? It's much more targeted. They understand how a firm is set up, how the network is set up. So they utilize social engineering. And that's a pretty powerful combination when you can use social engineering, a phone call, and then you also have the hacking part of it. And corporations are obviously really struggling with ransomware. I speak a lot about that now, because there's so much money that is spent on securing the system, the server, the network, the encryption, the firewall, and a tiny fraction is spent on training the employees, especially the employees that are not in the IT department, to not release sensitive information. And if I can hack your employees, if I can hack people, it's a lot easier to hack the systems.
So it's like an example of that. Walk me through, like, your the research before and what that call might look like to trick somebody into what they would do.
So I did an event recently with Valerie Plame. Valerie was the CIA agent that was outed by the Bush administration in 2003. And we were talking about the intersection of political spying and corporate spying. And she was talking about how much research went into sending an agent out into the field. And it was not dissimilar to the amount of research that we would do before we would do any type of social engineering, or what I call RUSE phone call. We would spend days researching, understanding both the company we were saying we were calling from, the company we were calling, Or if we were saying we were an internal person, we would research that person's voice. We would learn their accent. We would learn anything and everything we could so that when we made that phone call, we were able to have a high likelihood of success. So, for example, this is Gerhard calling from the office in Frankfurt, Germany. We have the European Union regulators here, and we need some help from the States, right? So now these corporations, large corporations, have offices all over the world. So I can be from anywhere, and I could be the senior vice president of compliance, Gerhard, who runs compliance for Europe, and now he's calling somebody in some far-flung office in Dublin or in Topeka, Kansas, or in Jacksonville, Florida, wherever, because firms have offices everywhere. And now that person's going, oh my God, hey, Gerhard, how you doing? Hey, what's going on? How can I help you, buddy? Because everybody's taught corporate culture, be a good corporate teammate. And so these individuals would give us information because they have access to the servers. They know how everything works. And so they would give us all this information that then the hackers could utilize because they knew how everything worked and how everything was set up.
Now, a lot of my listeners are going to be listening going, okay, this sounds like a big business kind of problem. Like, talk to me a little bit about what's happening and how this still resonates for small companies. Are small, 100-person, 50-person, even 20-person firms, like, are they under fire in this way too?
I mean, in a strange sort of way, it's even worse for them, right? Because I just had a client who is a small medical provider. They have 5 offices in Southern California, and they were hacked, and basically they were completely shut down. They could not operate. They could not make an appointment. They could not, pay a bill. They could not, they couldn't do anything. Now think about that, right? Your entire business is shut down. A small business like that, a relatively small business, that's just devastating, and they don't have the expertise. They have to hire people to come in and help them on an emergency basis, so they don't have people in-house that can figure this out. So small firms, it's even, it basically can take down a firm, if not permanently, certainly indefinitely, creating a tremendous loss.
Now, we hear a lot about how much this is technology, right? That the ransomware problem is as explosive as it is because of the automated nature, right? It's easy to send out bots and attack and look for vulnerabilities. Now, how much you're talking to clients like the one you've just talked about, how much is the balance of that is technology versus how much of that is human social engineering as part of the attack?
Well, the hospital one that I just told you about, it was human social engineering. Basically, somebody called up, portrayed to be somebody that had an affiliate relationship, and the person on the other end of the phone basically told them stuff, even gave them a password, to basically make it, it was so easy, it was ridiculous. And again, this was just a young person who was relatively new with the firm. And by the way, the social engineers, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for young people who have grown up in an era of digital transparency, so they don't understand the importance of keeping their mouths closed in terms of secrets. They have a tendency to overshare, and that's what happened in this situation. And they basically, they just basically gave the hackers the roadmap so then that the hacking was, my teenager could have hacked that company.
So how do you, if it's that simple and it's one little mistake, how are you advising companies, particularly as you think about these small ones with limited resources, how are you advising them to defend?
Look, it really is not that hard. It's not rocket science, but some time and some training must take place. Steve Jobs, legendary CEO of Apple, he told all of his employees, and Apple is one of the best companies in the world for secrecy, right? For keeping secrets. And he told his employees, look, if you reveal a secret to your cousin, to your brother, to your wife, and that somehow comes back, forget about losing your job. We're going to prosecute you. Right? We're going to actually come after you. And so he would put the fear of God into his employees so that they would not talk about products they were working on with anyone. And I think that's the thing, that there has to be severe consequences outlined, that this data, while seeming like it's not that big a deal, this information that is, when it's released, is deadly to a firm, because it's basically giving hackers a roadmap to shut down systems, and basically create a situation that's ripe for ransomware.
So do you think fear is a component of that training? What's the way to convey this message most effectively to employees?
Well, you have to give the scenarios. If you're a small company, you have to say, hey, here's Robert, and he's going to tell about this scenario with this hospital, where this hospital could not book an appointment for 10 days. How does a firm survive that? And reputationally, think about that. If you're calling up your doctor or your medical provider and you can't even make an appointment because their system has been hacked and they're being asked to pay ransom, what they are trying not to pay, and now they're basically, the firm is inoperable, the system is inoperable, aren't you going to maybe go, well, I got to call somebody else, I got to go to the doctor, I got to get an x-ray, I got to get an MRI. So it's just so devastating for a small firm. So employees need to understand that you giving information up, you clicking on an email that you shouldn't click on, you responding to some sort of text that you shouldn't respond to, at work, can literally shut a firm down and cause, forget about millions of dollars, tens of millions, and in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, cybersecurity is, $1 trillion business, right? So it's really critical that employees understand that this is as serious as anything gets at a firm. And so people need to, I always say, anything you get, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a text, whether it's an email, that implies some sort of emergency that you have to deal with right away, that is a crisis, you need to walk away from the device, talk to somebody at work, call your supervisor before you do anything. Because 9 times out of 10, when there's this emergency request, it's a phishing situation or some sort of scam.
So the quip has always been trust but verify. Is
Right.
it actually moving more towards distrust and verify? Like how would you try to convey that more effectively?
Well, I think that's well said, and I'm going to steal that, if that's okay, because I do use trust but verify, but I think that's better. I think distrust and verify is the way to go. I really do, because I know how good I was at getting people to believe that I was on the same team, that we were working together, that we had an emergency, we had a crisis, we were in Washington, D.C., and the feds were coming down our back. We were meeting with the auditors, and we were having, we were going to be delisted by NASDAQ if we didn't vote. Whatever the emergency was, the people would go, oh my God, I got the head of compliance on the phone, I have the head of IT on the phone, I have the head of legal on the phone, and there's this problem. I got to help this guy, And so I think distrust and verify is better.
So I'm going to ask, just sort of a little fun. What's the thing that always worked that surprised you? That always worked when it comes to social engineering somebody.
The accents. I mean, the German accent I think is pretty good, but we did other accents, and it always blew me away. Do you know how many times people said "nein" to Gerhard with the German accent? Never. Never. The crazier, we called them ploys or ruses. We had the inside ploy, we had the compliance ploy, we had the dropping the grapefruit ploy, right? Whatever ploy we came up with, the crazier it was, the more ridiculous it was, the more outlandish it was, the better it worked. It was really, that was the thing that amazed me.
So if people want to dive into some of these other stories, you've got a new book out, right? Where can people find out more?
Sure, yeah. So my book, RUSE, Lying the American Dream from Hollywood to Wall Street, is the story of how a wannabe actor became the world's greatest corporate spy. I wrote it during COVID, so I wanted it to be fun. It's a page turner. It reads like a spy novel, even though everything in it is true. And the best way to get it and also learn more about me is to go to my website, which is robertkerbeck.com, Kerbeck, robertkerbeck.com. You can also see the trailer for RUSE because it's being made into a TV series. If you do pick up the book and read it, you can also email me from my website, tell me what you thought. We can compare notes on spying or any type of hacking question people have, because I love hearing from people that have read the book.
It's crazy to hear that it's still going on in the old-fashioned method. Well, Robert, thanks for joining me today.
Oh, well, thanks for having me, Dave. It was really fun.
Thanks for your time and attention. Time is a finite resource, and I really value you giving me some of yours. If you like this video, you can let me know with a like of the video, and even more valuable, hitting the subscription button. My content is all free, and I use metrics like subscriptions to pay the bills, so it has real value. The content here is produced under ethics guidelines posted at businessof.tech. If you're interested in more content like this, you can get access to content early via our Patreon at patreon.com/MSPradio. It's our give what you want model where you set the value of what you think the content is worth. If you like this podcast, you can catch it daily as the 5-minute news and commentary show, The Business of Tech, available on all your favorite podcatchers with links at businessof.tech. Just hit that big blue button to subscribe. Again, thank you for taking time out of your day to listen, and I really value the interaction. If you want to say something in the comments, I do respond and watch all that, and I look forward to talking to you next time.